outside and tight. Tighter. Tighter. Coming out to the hard right. Real fast. Open her up. Into top gear. Up over the top of the bridge. All right, hard left. Coming down very hard left. Getting a lot of gas. Staying tight. Go wide. And on the outside. Okay, we're all set clear. Right on the inside. Okay, going to the downhill section. Cut her quick to the right. 8.1 Ks out. All right, hard right brake. We're down to count hard. Coming to the S's. Gas, gas. Stay away from the outside. That's where you have trouble. All right, down here. Brake. Slip it into the left. Stay outside. No trouble now. Outside. Cut her in. Double right coming up. Hard right. Another one. Another right. Down. SO9. Down to the bridge. That's... All right, here you come. Hard left. Hard right. Car's pressure's all right now. Oil pressure's fluctuating a little bit. Dive in here. Stay in close. In close. Don't get out too far. You get in trouble. Inside. Inside. Up to the top. At the mule. Switch it to the right. At the Bergwerks. Deep, deep right. Now hard right. Hard. Keep it in. That's a boy. Okay. That's the way. Now keep to the right. Very fast left turn. It was stay right. Stay right there. In. Now you got it. Keep her there. Okay. Up to the top. Another left-hander. Stay it inside. Okay. Good shape. Got a couple quick rights coming up now. All right. Keep it inside. Inside. That's a boy. Up. Okay. Got a quick left coming up. Double left, in fact. That's right. Double left. Another left. There it is. All right. Little airborne that time. Turn up to SO13Ks. Quick right. Let her have it. All the way. Give it full bore. That's it. Heading up to the carousel. Downshift. Third. Taking second. All right. Inside out. Okay. Gas. More. Okay. Up to the top. Gas it more. All right. More gas. Down the hill. Inside. All right. Down the hill. Dive it down. Give her the gas. That's up, baby. Give her that gas. We're at the Wutchen. Hard right. There you go. Up over the top. Straight on down. Car feels pretty good now. Hold her steady. That's up, baby. Hold her in there. More. That's it. Smooth it out. Let her go. Up here. Build up the speed. So we ought to make up some good time. We're going by the Dachshund Hart over the bridge. Downhill. Turn about 67.
He may be a winner against time. He against space. They are the heroes of headlines, but their victory is only as sure as their team. The men on the lifeline, the men in the pit. We hear it said, the old country. Washed by the old seas, the North, the Aegean, the Mediterranean. Home of our grandfathers, seemingly slow-paced, quaint, picturesque. The streets are for meeting and eating, no distinction between sidewalk and roadway. On the surface, the European does not appear to be car conscious. In fact, his life is not predicated on it. He may or may not even permit the car to use the road. But when he does, then the roadway becomes the raceway. The car, the quickest competition car in the world. The Ferrari, the Maserati, the Porsche, the Lotus. In intimate detail, he knows their specifications, and the race comes to where he lives. The European circuit is Indianapolis on tour. Here on the north coast of Sicily, the longest and nearly the last of the open around-the-houses racing events. Past the vine and the olive, the orange and the lemon. 45 miles to the lap, 10 laps around the mountainous circuit with 440 corners every lap. The 45th running of the torturous Targa Florio. The mountains of Sicily, rising to 2,000 feet, falling to 30 feet. Climbing, cornering, and falling, devising the most grueling punishment a car or driver can take. This is sports car racing under the Federación Internacional del Automobile. Two categories, Gran Turismo and competition sports. The GT, the production car geared for everyday living, but with a yen, for a racing fling. And the competition sports that legally is all the FIA demands, but spiritually is a race car. Not a car for picking up the groceries. Red, the national color of Italy. Belgian yellow, French blue. Silver for the German team. Against 450 miles of black asphalt that only one word describes, terrible. A test of ability and durability in the driver. A test of stamina and speed in the car that each year surpasses itself. 1958, 42 minutes, 17 and a half seconds, the fastest lap. A record broken 20 times over in this 1961 day. 40 minutes, 3 4/10 seconds. Vital statistics, the proving ground to manufacturers of cars and components. Banner headlines, the household word that establishes a driver as a national figure. Why? Because there is respect for the professional. Respect for his tireless efforts to acquire his skill. Year after year, he practices and he runs on the same circuits. In his hands, the wheel miraculously traces what he so deliberately learned. The race is a mountain, a challenge because it is there. For him, the biggest race is within himself. It is a summit, a goal a long way off. Where angels fear to tread pretty much describes what some experts had to say about the entry of the American racing team, Cammarata International, in European racing. Such participation had been like the kid brother, allowed to hang around, watch the big boys play. Of course, many internationally famous drivers got their start as U.S. amateurs, but the opportunities to drive the American colors of white and blue in Europe were limited. Cammarata jumped in. Then followed luck of all shades. Cammarata cars at one time led such important races as Argentina, Le Mans, Nassau, Sebring, and the Targa Florio. The team toted up 14 firsts, including class victories, 5 second and 7 third places, plus establishing 7 lap records. In 1960, the Cammarata Type 61 Maserati won the Nurburgring 1,000 kilometer, with Britain's Sterling Moss and the American Dan Gurney sharing the wheel. Now it is 61, and Cammarata International again is at the Nurburgring, Germany. For those lucky enough to rate a pit pass, the race is more than the competition itself. It is the planning and the writing and the rehearsing before the curtain rises. The fans roam backstage, examining the scenery, recognizing the stars, debating the plot. The plot begins with the factory teams who make international racing possible. They have the edge in money, experience, and concentration, but they are equally handicapped by the pressure for constant experimentation. Then the private stables, like Cammarata, Ecorea Cos, Scuderia Serenissima, running an assortment of cars of their choice with freelance drivers. Like the factory teams, they test automotive products. And finally come the lone wolves, with help from wherever they can muster it. And because the requirements for winning are, in the last analysis, incalculable, they often beat the giants.
Achtung! Achtung! Die Wagenabnahme beginnt von Box Nummer 5 um 14:30 Uhr. Ich wiederhole, Box Nummer 5 um 14:30 Uhr.
Cars must conform to stiff FIA regulations. They must have, among other things, space for at least 2 people, although only one will drive at a time, strictly measured luggage space, horn, headlights, and working wipers. The FIA divides GT and competition sports cars into some 12 classes each, according to engine displacement. In the 1,000 Ks, all classes race at one time, but not necessarily against each other. There are many races within the race. It is a grim, gray dawn at the pits, 2 hours before the national flag of Germany is dropped to start this 623-mile event. There's Phil Hill, leading American driver, checking out the cockpit of his factory Ferrari. Cammarata, with the number 1, in honor of last year's victory. In spite of weeks of preparation, no driver or mechanic or team manager breathes, who believes that another adjustment will not be the one to ensure victory. Cammarata's ace mechanic, Bobby Wallace, adjusts the jets to the day's atmospheric conditions. High-test pump gasoline is used, supplied by the leading European distributors. Twice during the race, the car will come in for fuel, once for tires and a coolant check. Bonnier, the bearded Swede, his country's leading driver. Team conference for Porsche. Gurney, the rising Californian. Olivier Gendebien, 3 times victor at Le Mans. And Von Trips, fresh from his first Grand Prix victory in Holland. Nearing start time, the cars are pushed into position for the Le Mans type start. This is a short and dramatic way of demonstrating that these are self-starting vehicles. Cars and drivers line up on opposite sides of the track. At the signal, or ahead of it for the impatient ones, a mad 30-yard dash is made to the silently waiting mounts. From then on, there is no silence for nearly 7 hours. Of course, it is not unheard of for an inexperienced, nervous driver to wait out a lap or two with a flooded carburetor. Not jumping the gun, Porsche's racing director Von Honstein, Denise McCluggage, leading woman driver, and Alan Eager, both fresh from their GT victory at Sebring. Maston Gregory, Willie Mares, Sterling Moss. Umberto Maglioli confers with teammate Maurice Trintignant. And Sterling, ever demanding of the just right conditions, the quality that separates the professional from the others. But the record speaks only of performance. What counter is there of courage and determination? What clock times patience? What ruler measures the extent of a man's endurance, the depth of his devotion, the height of his belief? Here is the story of the Cammarata racing team in the months before the Nurburgring. Lloyd Lucky Kasner, the organizer of Cammarata, the go-getter after cars, money, and drivers. Formerly an airline pilot and at one time a pitcher aspiring to a big league career. Began racing as a hobby. Now, no longer the amateur, but still learning the hard way, driving at the Nurburgring and against the world's best. Maston Gregory, typical beginnings, hot rodding in Kansas City, U.S. amateur, but not typical results. At 23, he was first at Argentina, third at the Nürburgring, behind Fangio and Moss. At 24, he was posted as fifth in the International Driving Championship. Relaxed behind the wheel in the classic manner, he still looks like the kid around the corner. One of the world's fastest, that is. Such drivers are often asked, why? But the answer may often be a private reason, a personal drive that even they may not identify. Some may think them foolhardy devils who simply get in and go. Others, equally deceived by appearances, would believe that the rewards are worth the danger. But the truth is far different. The reality is hardly glamorous. Step by step, you become a driver. The hard way, with caution and calculation, with precision and purpose, with routine and rigor, with forethought and hindsight. Thus, Maston Gregory, about to run the 1,000-kilometer Nürburgring, remembers the 19th running of the Grand Prix de Monaco 2 weeks before. Monte Carlo, with houses rising like cliffs from the sea. Not sports cars, but Formula One cars. No nonsense, strictly for racing machines. This is the Grand Prix of Monaco, through the streets and tunnels of Monte Carlo, up the hill toward the casino, about 2 miles to the left. Down past the railroad station and back to the sea. An arm-aching 100 laps of it. Shift and turn, accelerate and brake. No straight longer than 500 yards. 16 men intent on winning 9 points toward the World Championship. 16 that qualify to start. The man in the cockpit, the man who symbolizes the team, that complex of driver, mechanic, designer, and manufacturer which is indispensable to automobile racing. Practice day. What comes of the drawing boards is pulled apart in the garage. What is discovered on the course is debated in the pits. Performances are analyzed. Guesses and hunches are respected. Problems are tackled. There is a constant give and take within the whole fraternity of racing. The sum total of all the information, experience, and theory ultimately rests with the driver, who carries it into the cockpit. And this last series of delicate adjustments, the balance between man and machine, is a private area with the driver, Maston Gregory, and his mechanic, Aidan Jones, as principals.
Well, reasonably good. I've got quite a few things I want to change. That steering ratio is not very good. I haven't put that slow ratio in. It's too slow. I've got to go back to number 8 box. Can you do that?
Yep, we'll do that right away.
On gear ratio, what I'd like to do, I'd like to go to a higher ratio, and then we won't bother with 5th gear. We just use 4th gear, and that'd give us a lower ratio overall. I think we'd be better off. It'd work out a little bit better in the corners, too.
Yeah, well, then we'll step up the ratio and change the steering.
Let's put a 476 in. That should give us about a 536 overall if we just use 4th gear. And also, I'd like to raise the steering wheel up over the chassis tube instead of having it below, because it's fouling up with my legs, and I can't get around those hairpins very good.
Oh, yes, that'll be more comfortable. You won't have to swing your elbow so much.
Yeah, it'll be a lot easier. Now, let me see what else is. I'm having a little trouble with the front brakes. They're locking, and I don't know what it is, but can we get Mintex people to check that?
Yes, certainly.
Fine, if we can get both them over there, they can look at the brake disc and also the brake pads. They can see how well they're wearing. I'm trying to figure out what else there is to check. Well, I'd like a number 2 roll bar, and we've got to have that in the front. That number 3 is too heavy, and I'm getting too much understeer. I'm just plowing all the way around the station corner. I've got to, and in fact, around all the corners, it's very bad. I want to get a little oversteer.
Yeah, well, we could get a bit on the tire pressures as well.
You know, we've got a little bit of problem there, too, because I'm in a pretty high water temperature. I don't want oil out.
Well, you don't have to worry about that at all, Maston, because we're using downguard there. You don't have water. Well, you won't have any boiling problems or anything like that. It'll just run to the temperature and...
Yeah, we're around there in temperature, so we're okay there. Okay, that's good.
The driver's intuitive feelings about his vehicle, sometimes vague and indefinite, are understood and grasped by his mechanic as if simple statements of fact. On Monte Carlo's short, twisty circuit, there is room for only 16 cars. Invitations to factory teams and the like took 12 places. That left 4 places open. Places to go to the 4 cars making the fastest laps in practice. There were 9 cars trying for those 4 places. One was Cammarata's Cooper Climax, Maston Gregory driving. An old hand in the Formula One circuits, and with a third at Monaco in '57, it was Gregory's strategy to bide his time, not to strain his Cooper in practice. His early lap times looked good enough to earn a start. Just wait and see what the competition would do in the new Formula One. The new 1.5-liter Formula One cars, smaller than the old Formula of 2.5 liters, were not much slower. The other cars vying for the 4 open places were pushing hard. Trouble. The Lotus of the young German driver, Michael May, broke an oil line. Poof is poof in any language. The oil flags went out, slippery. When Maston should have been snicking the seconds off his qualifying time, he and 19 others were forced to back off to play it safe. Down to the last day of qualifications and down on the list of top qualifiers. Where was Gregory? There. Better. Plenty of time yet for a few more hot laps. And Gregory and Cammarata could have it made. But more trouble, serious trouble. Innes Ireland, driving a Team Lotus, made an error in gear selection in a complicated new transmission. The rear end locked up, throwing the car against the tunnel guardrail. Ireland got away with a broken leg. First aid for Innes and the clearing of oil and debris from the course froze activity, but not the clock. By the time practice was resumed, time had all but run out. Gregory knew that his lap times were dangerously close to the end of the list. He knew that he could have gone flat out the first day and qualified, but he had elected to bide his time. Now he waited for the final results. 16 positions, 21 contestants. Moss fastest with 1 minute, 39 and 1/10 seconds. Down through 16 names. Henry Taylor, 3.5 seconds slower. The starting field was closed. Cammarata's Maston Gregory was 17th. 1/10 of a second slower than Taylor. 1/10 of a second. The record book is now closed on this event. But Gregory vowed that at the Nurburgring, nothing would be taken for granted. Cammarata's chief mechanic, Bobby Wallace, a dour New Zealander, is not one to take things for granted either. He rechecks what he has already checked and double-checked before. In his mind's eye, he measures the lifeline. He reconfirms the potentialities of performance. He reweighs the components of safety. There are no absolutes and no guarantees, but there is security in uncompromising, relentless precision. No detail can be ignored because no detail stands alone. Each part is a link, and the most minute negligence can compound itself into failure or death. The detail is the only certainty, the positive knowledge that every known step has been secured. Ignorance or carelessness, bravado and recklessness are for children and fools, not for men. Adventure is only realized, conquest is only attained along the paths others have blazed. Beyond that, all is unknown. The next foothold or the extra mile per hour. Each new foothold is a stepping-off place, for every new record carries within itself only the certainty that it will be broken. However, battle will take place, and the driver, in the days of practice before the race, is like a scout sent out to study the obstacles that lie ahead. It takes a good driver to spot a malfunction in a car, and it takes a great mechanic to give the driver 100% of his car. The front end is not right, and Lucky thinks the brakes are grabbing. His analysis may be right or wrong. It depends on his driving sensitivity, his mechanical knowledge. But Bobby cannot be wrong. No one life permits him that luxury. The scientific method, common sense, and racing all call for making and testing only one change at a time. If this trouble is brakes or suspension, first one will be checked and tested, then the other. In fact, to allow the driver to adjust to the machine is to waste the skill of the driver and the strength of the car. To adjust the machine to the driver is to discipline both to their highest potential. And mechanic Bobby Wallace knows that this is the fundamental truth of race engineering. Race day comes closer. Pressure mounts and a sleepless night might be put to some productive use. For mechanics, there never is a night for sleeping, and apparently there never will be. The goal is clear. The culmination of weeks of preparation is at hand. The lifeline is secure. Men and equipment are near their pinnacle. Each known step has been proven. Each element, the driver, the mechanic, the car, the component manufacturer, is tightly linked together. This composite team is greater than any of its parts. It is a force strong enough to make the next move into the unknown. For Cammarata, drivers Gregory and Kasner, mechanics Wallace and Jones, this is a challenge of the great history that is the Nurburgring 1000 Ks. Memories of Nuvolari, Rosemeyer, Dick Seaman, Fangio still race on this circuit. The sounds of the old Mercedes-Benz, auto unions, and Alphas still sound in the hills. The painted map on the cement brings these things to mind. Here at the Grand Prix in 1957, Fangio fought his famous duel with Mike Hawthorne and Peter Collins. And here in 1958, Peter Collins met his death. To run this day is to follow in proud steps. Jimmy Clark beats Moss in the foot race across the track and is first away. Then Moss. Ginther in the Ferrari. Phil Hill's Ferrari gets a late start. Dan Gurney in the Porsche also left at the post. Behind the pits, it's Clark leading. Moss. Ginther. Gregory in fourth, with Edgar Barth and Ricardo Rodriguez following. Then come the many GT and smaller sports cars. At the Adenau Bridge, 9 kilometers out, the crowd waits for the first car. Porsche. Moss. Ginther's Ferrari. Clark in the Aston. Maston holding fourth place. Rodriguez Brothers Ferrari. And then the Lotuses, Alphas, Morgans, MGs, Fiats, Porsches, Lolas, Austin Healey's, and DBs that complete the field. A few minutes later, spectators at the carousel see the leaders pass. Moss, followed by Ginther, Clark, and Gregory. Then Barth, followed by the amazing GT Ferrari of Mares. At the end of the first lap, some 10 minutes later, it is Moss with a long lead. But coming up amazingly fast, Phil Hill with his lights on ahead of Ginther. Gregory passes in fifth. Hill, using special rain tires, even though the course is only damp, proceeds to shatter lap record after lap record at making up for his bad start. On the sixth lap, Denise McCluggage spins her Ferrari at the Adenau Bridge. By the ninth lap, Phil Hill's drive had carried him to a decisive lead and a new lap record of 9 minutes, 15 seconds. Moss now running second, but still Moss. Per schedule, Gregory is signaled to come in for gas and turn the wheel over to Lucky Kasner. The Cammarata Maserati still holds fourth place. Almost on cue, cold rain, even snow begins falling as Lucky takes over. He has his work cut out for him on a slippery surface. Rain polishes the course, cuts visibility, but the cars push on. Pace slackens, but effort redoubles. Braking distances go up, and the smaller, lighter Porsches are, on the whole, favored by this weather in their uneven battle against the powerful Ferraris. When Hauenstein, Porsche's team captain, brings Graham Hill in and turns the Porsche back to Moss, the greatest wet driver there is. In the wet, Moss gains 15 seconds a lap on Jean de Bien's Ferrari. Kasner doggedly maintains his position. The Ferraris began to sound rough. The air intakes, which were intended to cool the rear brakes, are taking in so much water that the carburation is upset. The Ginther Jean de Bien car calls at the pit several times and loses ground. Then suddenly Moss is out. His engine seized up, and he abandons the car near the Flugplatz. 2 down, and Kasner takes over second place, 5 minutes and 30 seconds behind Phil Hill's Ferrari. Realization dawns in the Cammarata pits. We may win this. We're leading. Phil Hill's Ferrari went off the road in a hairy spin. Phil unhurt, but the car out. On the next lap, Kasner brings the now leading car in for Gregory. Again, seemingly on cue, the rain stops and the sun comes out. The Cammarata car is in first place by a full 7 minutes, but victory is not yet assured. The Rodriguez boys, delayed by throttle linkage problems, are pushing their V12 Ferrari hard and gaining time by handfuls. There may still be time to catch the Cammarata car. On the 41st lap, 3 from the finish, the Cammarata Mazda is signaled to stop at the pits for a few gallons of gas as insurance. But something is wrong. The starter. Trouble for the Rodriguez boys. A wheel broken on the course, but the car driven back to the pits by a valiant Pedro. The wheel is changed quickly, but still the young Mexican's bid for victory is over. Bobby Wallace, after weeks of labor, has one word to say to his driving teammate: bravo. Gregory and Kasner receive honors. For the second year in a row, the same team has proven itself at the Nurburgring 1,000 kilometer. Cammarata flying the American colors in international racing.